friends, welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're doing well. Welcome to another video and welcome to my first end of the year video where I'm going to be talking about the worst books of 2021. We are going to be talking about the negative side of my 2021 reading. I'm going to talk over the worst books that I read this year, the most disappointing books that I read this year, and my DNFs. I decided to combine all of these together just because I didn't have a lot of books that I thought were the worst of, and I didn't really want to make a dedicated video to my disappointing and DNF'd books, so that's why they're all going into one video, so I hope you don't mind that. But because I didn't love these books all that much, I'm going to try not to spend too much time bashing them and really just show you them, give you the main reasons why I didn't love them, and move on. And I'm just going to say, even though I feel like it's not really necessary, but this is a disclaimer. If I dislike a book that you absolutely loved, I'm sorry. That's nothing against you. I just didn't love it. It didn't work for me. I'm happy that it worked for you, but we can't read them all and love them all. Does that make sense? So without further ado, let's talk about the books that I really didn't like this year. Okay, we're going to start with the only book in the section of the worst books of 2021 that I actually still own. And this is a book that I don't plan on getting rid of, which is very strange for me to say. But the only reason that's the case is because it's a part of a series that I really, really enjoy. And that is Ferris by Marissa Meyer. I did not like this villain origin story. I didn't find it at all entertaining, fun, worthwhile. I didn't find the character likable in any way, shape, or form. And I know that she's not supposed to be, but her motives and the way that she went about doing the things that she did in this book just didn't feel satisfying for me. This is the novella in the Lunar Chronicle series by Marissa Meyer. I read this in between Cress and Winter, so I read it before I read the last book in the series, and I think that it did do something really well, and that is the fact that it did really break down the story behind Princess Celine, as well as some more of Winter's story, which you get in the very last book, and you get a little bit more background on their stories and kind of how they interconnect into the series, which I really, really enjoyed that aspect, but everything else, And that aspect was this little big in this book, and it's not even that big, so it just wasn't worth it. I will be keeping the series. I do want to get the newer editions and the paperbacks because I think that they're gorgeous, but I don't think that this book was at all worth it in any way, shape, or form. Up next, we're going to talk about a book that I read pretty early on in the year, and that is The Kissing Game by Maria Hart. Oh Lord, this was really bad. This was really bad. It was a romance, an adult romance, that I got in a blind date with the book, and I believe that I actually read it because it came up on my TBR as my lowest rated book on my Goodreads shelf, and boy, they were not wrong. Holy crap, was it? It was just so bad. It had some really, really racist segments in here. I didn't like the inclusion of the white supremacy situation that was happening. I didn't really care for the romance. The main character was literally so annoying, and I just didn't care for the writing all around. It just wasn't a book that I overall enjoyed, and I'm glad I no longer own it. Up next, we're going to talk about one that I feel like could be very hit or miss. I feel like a lot of people love this book and this author, and it's just not for me. This writing does not work for me. Her other book also ended up in my worst books of the year last year as well, or my DNFs, one of the two. But that is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. This is a book that I read I was going to do a giving authors a second chance video, and I just wasn't at all compelled to read any of the books that I picked out for that video. It was putting me in a slump just thinking about wanting to read them, so I ended up not bringing that video to you guys just because I wasn't having a great time, but I did read this one during that time, and I didn't like it. I read the whole damn thing from beginning to end, and when I tell you I had no feelings for the characters, no invested interest in anything that was happening. I didn't care about the plot. I didn't care about this girl who committed suicide and everybody was trying to figure out why, and the interconnections of these people in this town. It just did not do anything for me. Nothing about that book was what I wanted it to be, and it was not entertaining. It was not great. It was not fond memories at all. So I'm glad that I am not going to read any more from her. It's a decision, and I'm sticking to it. She's just not for me. I'm happy if she's for you, but not for me. The next one, I'm going to try to be kind. I'm going to try. But The Elite by Kira Cass. Honestly, if I really wanted to be harsh, I could also put the last book in this series, I forget what it's called, The Crown or whatever. I don't remember what it's called. The One by Kira Cass. I could also put that in this list, but I thought maybe if I just, really bashed on The Elite, the other one really wouldn't really be necessary. The Elite is the second book in the Selection series by Kira Cass, and yeah, it was terrible. Really, really, really bad. I hate with a fiery burning passion America and Maxon. Nothing about their relationship is what I wanted. America is one of the most naive, just silly, stupid characters, and I just don't understand her motives. I don't understand her mindset. I don't understand where she's coming from. I don't get it. And maybe because this was supposed to be written for a young adult audience, but I don't know if it was just timely. Like, it's written a long time ago, and that's the reason why it's not great. But it's not great, okay? It's really, really bad. And I ended up pushing through the last book in the series because I felt like I owed it to myself to get to the end in hopes that it would just get better, and it really fucking didn't. It really didn't. So I will never, not once read another Carrie Cass book. I'm sorry. Even if she puts out something that sounds absolutely amazing, I just don't think I can do it. I'm burned, and I don't want to go back. The next two books I actually read rather recently, and they're both ebooks. One's an ebook, one's an audiobook that I read from, that was like included in Kindle Unlimited and or Audible Plus. And the first one I'm going to talk about is the one that was from Kindle Unlimited, and that is Just Drop Out. This is by J. Bree. This is a reverse harem book that I really thought that I was going to love. It was supposed to be really badass and dark, bully romance, but there was just so many things about this book that really didn't sit well with me, and the longer and longer that I sat with this book and thought about it, the more and more I hated it. This is a reverse harem, which I do love, and I think that reverse harems have merit. Obviously, one of my favorite series of all time is a reverse harem. But this one just had zero, zip, zilch, nada reverse harem plots to it. It was all just a bully, not romance, just a bully book. And it was set in high school, which, I'm sorry, I don't want to read about a bunch of high schoolers doing a reverse harem type relationship. That just wasn't what I wanted. And I didn't realize that it was going to be a 15-year-old character at the plot of this book, and like I just didn't, that just rubbed me the wrong way. There was tons of talk about sexual assault towards the character as well as gang rape. These characters that were bullying her took it way, way, way too far, including beating her up, pissing on her stuff, like smearing blood all over her room. I'm out. This is not for me. And I was hoping that when I got to the end, it would feel worth it, because there would be some relationship aspect happening between at least one of the three men that this girl was head over heels obsessed with. But nothing. No, it didn't feel worth it at all. It was not satisfying, and I will definitely not be continuing on with that series. It just wasn't worth it. However, there's one other book that I own by J. Bree that I do really want to read. It's another reverse harem, so I'm going to give her another try, but I'm hoping to God that it's better than this one, because that was just really bad. And the last book that I'm going to talk about today in my worst books of the year list is a book that I didn't think that I was going to ever read, just because I didn't know how I felt about this author, but I saw that it was available in Audible Plus, which means that it comes with my subscription, so I figured that I would download it and listen to it. It was a short little novella. It was only about an hour long. When I tell you it's an hour that I'll never get back, I kid you not. And that is Rock Hard. This is by L.J. Shen. And oh, holy hell, this was really fucking bad. Like, really, really bad. If you want to read a book about a woman who's working at a hotel that runs into a rock star that is a total and absolute douche and has absolutely no respect for the womankind, you should definitely read this. Yeah, it was totally worth my hour. Actually, no, it was not. I hope you caught that sarcasm, because wow, it was just so terrible. The male main character of this book was so domineering, so pushy, so disgustingly just like icky, and the only basis between their sexual relationship was the fact that she had a crush on this rock star for forever, and it was like living out her fantasies, but there was nothing sexy about their sexual interactions. There was nothing hot or good about it. It was just ick all the way around, and some of the wording that she used in this book, like, I wanted to vomit. It was not it. I was not about that life. So yeah, I will not be rereading that again. I will say that I'm a glutton for punishment, apparently, because I read an audiobook by the same author immediately after that, and that one was much, much, much better, but wow. Okay, now we're going to talk about my most disappointing books of the year. There's definitely a few of them here that I was just so disappointed by, and when I say disappointed, I don't mean that I gave it a 2 or 1 star rating. It just means that I was expecting a lot more from these books, and I just didn't get that. Let's start off with the books that I own, and then we'll go into the ones that I no longer own. The first one being Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. Wow. This one is probably one of, if not my biggest disappointment of the year, just because I loved Scythe. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it, and I thought that it was such a fun and engaging read. But when I got to Thunderhead, I just didn't care for the plot. I didn't care for the character arcs. I didn't like the ending of this book, even though it left off on quite a huge cliffhanger. I've had like almost zero interest to pick up the third book because I just didn't love how the second book played out. I have heard that the third book is not a great conclusion, but from other people, I've heard that they love the series and they think that I should definitely give it a try. So I will definitely read the third book at some point in time. Now is not that time. I need a little bit more separation from my extreme disappointment of this book, but wow, this is definitely one that I wish that I loved more than I did, and I just didn't. I can't really even pinpoint like a certain section where I felt like it went wrong in regards to like, because at first I was enjoying it, and then all of a sudden it was just like, what? Why did I read that? You know? And I wish that I could pinpoint exactly where it fell off for me, but everything that I wanted to come to fruition about this book just didn't, and I'm sad about it. Oh, this one, man, this one hurts, because when I tell you that I was so invested and so into this book all the way up until the end, I mean, like, I was die hard. It was going to be a favorite of the year. I was going to go watch the TV show. And then the ending hit, and I was like, really? That's what we're doing? And that's One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I really, really wanted to love it. I did. And I did love it for a good majority of the book. I was flying through it. I was very excited. I read it pretty much in like 2 sittings, and I just thought it was so great. And then the ending hit, and I was like, but why? But why? Why was that person the culprit? Like, I just didn't like it. I wasn't compelled by the story. It didn't feel gratifying to go through all of this back and forth and this finger pointing and, you know, we're playing the blame game and everyone's trying to figure out who did it, who done it. And then to figure out that that person did it, it was just like, it was so unsatisfying. I wasn't a fan of the ending. And the more that I think about it, the more it makes me mad. The more angry it makes me, because I feel like the ending was a cop-out, in my personal opinion. I know I'm not the majority here. I know that a lot of people love this book and the ending. It just didn't work for me, and I am mad about it. We're going to do some back-to-back YA thrillers, and that is Sadie by Courtney Summers. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought that it was really good. However, the hype around this book was just way too overdone, and I was expecting so much more than what I got. And I think that for me, what really disappointed me was the ending. I understand the reason, or at least the reason I think that the author wrote the ending the way that she did. However, it just wasn't what I wanted. I wanted a lot more closure from this book than what I got, especially because by the middle of the book, you really do become invested in this character's story, and the way that it's written, you're so curious to figure out what really happened. And I just didn't get the closure that I needed or wanted from this storyline, which left me feeling like it was for nothing, you know? And that's the worst type of book to read, when you feel like you read and put all this energy and time and effort into reading something just to get to the end and it doesn't feel satisfying. So I did enjoy it. I think that it's a really wonderful story, and if you like mystery thrillers in the YA genre, then I think you should definitely read it if you haven't already, and 100% listen to the audiobook if you have the chance, but it just wasn't my favorite book that I have read this year for sure. The next 2 ones are going to be very unpopular opinions, and I know it, but sometimes you just gotta be honest. And the first one I'm gonna talk about is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Sweet Lord. I can't even remember what I rated this, but if it's not a 3-star on Goodreads, I might just change it. Because the longer I sit with this book, the longer I realized that I just didn't enjoy it. And it wasn't that it wasn't a good book, and it wasn't that it wasn't written well. It just didn't hold my attention. It didn't give me any emotional connection to these characters. I didn't root for them. I didn't want the best for them. And I love the basis behind the story. I love the premise, and I think that for me, the execution just wasn't done in the way that I would have wanted. I think I was just expecting a little bit more than what I got, and I knew what the ending of the story was going to entail. The ending is not what made me mad. It's just the feeling of it not being satisfying. I think that's the main majority of something that can disappoint me. It just didn't feel satisfying. Like, I wanted more, and I didn't get it. I like the characters, and like I said, I like the premise. It just didn't execute it well for me. And the next one is one that I teetered on the edge of for a while. It was almost going to end up in my worst books of the year list, and I figured, no, you know what, I liked the ending enough that I'm gonna cut some slack and just put it in my disappointing books. But that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Wow. When I tell you the first 75-80% of this book, I did not want to read it no more. But I had gotten so far into the book, and it was so short, and the audiobook was going so fast that I was like, you know what, I just have to get to the end. And I'm glad that I did, because the ending felt a little bit more satisfying than the majority of the book. But I think that for me, the premise of this book was way better than the execution. And I'm not a huge fan of reading books that are super preachy unless I know that I'm going in with that. So if I'm reading a super self-helpy nonfiction that is set on being super preachy and giving you again and again a regurgitated meaning of what the book is about, then that makes sense to me. But this book was supposed to be a fiction book that was supposed to give me hope, as well as give me a fun and entertaining story. alongside some hard-hitting topics. And I just didn't feel like I get that. And I get that this is a really hard topic to read about, and there's a lot of grief going on in here, and there's a lot of mental health talked about. But I have also read a ton of books that also talk about mental health and grief and suicide, and it still felt hopeful and jovial and hard to read at times. But it felt worth it. And for this, it just didn't feel worth it. I didn't care for the characters. I didn't like the writing. I didn't like the execution. I didn't like how preachy it was. And I did like the ending. It saved it from being a 3-star instead of a 2-star. But it just wasn't the book that I wanted it to be, unfortunately. So that's pretty sad. I have 3 more books in the disappointing category, and then we'll get into my DNFs, which will be really, really quick because I'll just run through them. But the first one is Five Total Strangers. This is by Natalie. Nope, I don't remember the name of this author. But this was, man, I don't have a good track record. I just realized I don't have a good track record with YA thrillers, because this one, this was not what I wanted it to be. And I say that with a capital, like, not what I wanted it to be. It was so boring. I was so bored. I read this for a 24-hour readathon, and if it wasn't for that, I never would have finished this book, because I was just trying to fly through it. I wanted to get it over with, but I knew who the culprit was by chapter 2. There was no guessing games in it for me. Like, I knew. And it just wasn't satisfying. Like, there wasn't any scary, keep you on the edge of your seat, thrillery type vibes to this book enough to make me care about these characters. And it being so predictable, at least in my personal opinion, it just wasn't worth it. So, unfortunately, I didn't love that one, and I'm glad I never have to read it again. The next one, oh man, this one hurts. And that is The Black Kids by Christina Hamonos, whatever her middle name is, Reed. And I wanted to love this because I love reading books about Black main characters written by Black authors, but when I tell you this did not work for me, it did not work for me. It was beyond boring. Like, I didn't realize that a book about something so hard-hitting could be so fucking boring. Like, holy crap. And I just didn't like the characters. There was cheating in this book, which I did not like. Not in the slightest. And the cheating happened by one of the main character's best friends. Like, not okay. Not okay. And the way that the author kind of, like, justified the reason why they were doing what they were doing, it's just, I don't feel like there's any justification for cheating on anybody in any capacity. It just, that's my opinion. Again, my opinion. All of these are my opinions. So, don't crucify me. But, I just think that it just wasn't tasteful. It wasn't well thought out. And for this to be a book about, essentially, Black Lives Matter in the 90s, when things were crazy and a lot of stuff was happening, like, it was supposed to be more powerful than it was, and it just didn't execute on that standpoint. It spent a little bit too much time talking about high school dramas and cliquey issues that the main hard-hitting central point that was supposed to be the story didn't push through. So that's unfortunate. I didn't love it. I will give this author another try in the future, depending on what they decide to write, but this just wasn't the book for me. And the last book in the most disappointing category is very sad for me to say, because I love this author's other work. It is my favorite contemporary romance series of all time, and that is Talia Hibbert. And I read recently her Christmas book. It's called Merry Inkmas, and it fell flat. It fell really, really flat. I love romance books set in tattoo shops. I think that they are so much fun. I love the ideas of tattoos and somebody getting a tattoo and getting to understand the meaning behind it, and a guy that's all muscled up and tattooed up. It's like one of my favorite things to read about. And I liked the atmosphere of this book. I liked the fact that it was set in Christmas, but almost everything else about this book just didn't execute the way that it needed to. The characters were very one-note, very flat characters. And the development that these characters needed to go through in order for them to overcome their issues didn't feel like it was actually resolved. It was more like, let's sweep this under the rug and let's have an epilogue where I show you 5 years later where we have kids and we're married and we're living happily ever after. So, yeah, it just felt very one-dimensional, and the characters didn't have enough character growth to make the ending feel worth it and make it feel like they actually loved each other for the right reasons. So, unfortunate. Another one that I didn't absolutely love. I gave it a 3-star. I didn't hate it. I just wish that it would have executed a little bit more of what it needed to. And lastly, we're going to talk about my DNFs. I did not finish these ones, obviously, DNF. So I'm not going to talk about them too much because I can't really give you a full review on why I didn't like it. But I can give you the reasons why I DNF'd them. So the ones I'm going to start with, of course, are the ones that I own. And then the other ones will be the ones that I've already gotten rid of. The first one being The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I didn't care for the writing style. This book is way too long for what it's giving me. And it's a very, classic, well-known mystery thriller that just, it just didn't pull me in by the first 120, almost 140 pages, and I just didn't feel like it was worth it to read, so I let it go. Up next, we have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This one really does hurt me, but I tried to read it. I didn't love it, and I felt that it was very confusing and convoluted and not worth the mental energy it took for me to try to figure out what was happening just to get to the end. Like, I didn't want to do it, so another one that I'm not going to be continuing on with. My most recent DNF, and that is Chosen by PC Cast and Kristen Cast. Wow, this book was really bad. I kid you not, in the first 2 pages, there was already some really homophobic things being said, fat shaming, slut shaming, all the way around. Now, again, this book was published quite a long time ago, but it just doesn't stand for the test of time, and I have read 2 books in the series already, and I kind of pushed through some of those things that I was irritated by to get to the end, but now that we're on the 3rd book, I'm expecting more, and I wasn't getting it, so I was like, you know what? No more. Then we have A Little Life by Hanya Yagahara. I'm gonna have to take out my tabs on this one, but I got about 200. Oh, my bookmark is still in here. I can tell you. I got 264 pages into this one. 2 bookmarks. And it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the amount of time and effort that I was putting into it just for it to get more and more sad. And I just didn't like the writing style. It's a very overdone writing style. It's very over-explained, over-detailed, and it just wasn't for me. It felt like a slog to read this every time I picked it up, and for me to know from other people that say that it just gets sadder and sadder, and the sadness doesn't feel like it's worthwhile, it's not something I want to push myself through, so I'm gonna let it go and maybe read a review and see if it was worth it. The last physical book that we have here is A Universe of Wishes. It's an anthology edited by Danielle Clayton, and I was reading this one last year, I think, or maybe the beginning of this year, and I wasn't a fan of the stories in general. These are supposed to be diverse stories, and I liked them. I liked some of them. I thought the other ones were really, really bad, and I just had no inkling to want to pick this back up once I put it down, so I decided that I was going to officially DNF it in the video where I went through all of my TBR videos, so I'm happy that this is now getting off my shelves. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I'm sad because this is a Outright Special Edition, and it is signed by Danielle Clayton, but it just wasn't something that I wanted to push myself through, so it's unfortunate, but I'm sure somebody will find this and love it. Up next, we have Cheeky Royal. I don't remember who this is by. I DNF'd it pretty quickly into the book. I didn't really get to the main plot of this. It was an ebook that I had on my Kindle. I wasn't enjoying my time with it, so I let it go. Then we have Black Girl Unlimited. I don't remember the author of this one, but this was one that I was really, really excited for and really wanted to love, and I just didn't love it, unfortunately. This was a memoir slash, like, magical realism fantasy that I thought I was going to love. It had great components for me to really love it, but the magical realism aspects were just too wacky and weird for me, and it was very hard for me to get a semblance of what was really being talked about. There was a lot of prose and a lot of metaphors that I just didn't quite understand, and it really took me out of the story every time I was trying to get a grasp on what I was reading, and so for that point, I just couldn't stick with it, and I decided to put it down, I think at about 20%. The next one I'm really sad about because I've loved everything else this author has written and that I have read at least. And that is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant, aka Shauna McGuire. And I just didn't love the writing style of this one. This was a horror about mermaids and a really cool concept of like this crew going out to go to the same place where a crew has gone in the past and all of them died under mysterious circumstances and there was no bodies to be found, just a lot of blood and a lot of carnage. And I thought that the idea of this was really interesting and there was a lot of representation in this book, but the scientific aspects of this book were just a little bit too heavy-handed for me to really understand what was going on. It hurt my brain to like read it, and that's just not my vibe when I'm reading a book. I don't want my brain to hurt through most of the experience unless I'm really enjoying, questioning it, things at every turn, and this was just too mathematical and sciencey for me, so I had to let it go. One that I can talk about quickly and easily, and that is Les Mis by Victor Hugo. This book is a beast, a behemoth of a book, and I made it 26 pages in, and I said, no more. I don't want to do it anymore. It was 26 pages of this man that I didn't know anything about. He wasn't a synopsis. I don't even know why we spent 26 pages talking about him and his house and everything that he wore in every single detail, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. So I said bye-bye. Then we have A Whisper in the Dark by KJ Sutton and Jesse Elliott, I believe. This was a serial, the first part in a serial that I was trying to read. I got this recommendation actually from Katie over at Katie Wismer or Kate's Book Date, and she really loved this, so I thought that maybe I would too. I was going into this thinking that it was going to be a dark, smutty vampire romance, but there was no smut, and it wasn't really as dark as I wanted it to be. Granted, it was the first book in a serial, so they're really, really short, but I feel like if they're that short, they need to capture my attention and pull me in, and I had no intrigue. I was 75% of the way into this book, and I had no interest in picking it up. Like, it wasn't a good time for me. And I've now learned about myself, the one trope that I don't find as engaging as I used to is when a princess has, like, a fall from fame or whatever, and she's forced and kicked out of her kingdom and forced to go live on the streets and run for their lives. And I've read that so many times, it's not exciting for me anymore unless it's done really well and really uniquely, and this book just didn't do it. So I said no more. We also have The Demon King by Cinda Williams-Chima. I read about 40-ish pages of this. I read it both physically and via audiobook and reading along with a physical book, and I was just so confused. Like, I was lost. There was a lot of things happening, and I just didn't pick up on any of it. I just didn't like the writing style. So this is not one that I can feel like I can give a huge amount of reasons for it. It just didn't work for me, so I let it go. Then we have I Hope You Get This Message by... Oh, I'm not going to remember the name. But this is one that I was supposed to be buddy reading with a friend, actually. And I got halfway through the book, and I just realized that I had zero interest in the characters, in the story. I had no, like, emotional connection to any of it, and it just wasn't a fun time for me. So I let it go just because I didn't feel like getting to the end just to give it a mediocre 3 stars. So I figured I would just DNF it and not give it a rating at all. Then we have one that I've talked about many, many times on my channel, and that is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This book was too triggering for me. I know that so many people that read it and loved it. It just didn't work for me. I found it way too triggering, and it just didn't feel satisfying. It felt very icky. I didn't feel good about myself and about the book reading it, so I decided to put my mental health first and let go of this book because it just was not doing me any favors. And the last and final book that we're going to talk about is one that I'm sad to say that I didn't enjoy because I feel like it's very compared to Heartstopper, and that is Check Please. I wanted to love this. I think maybe the fact that I read it on ebook instead of physically might have something to do with it, but I just didn't love the writing style, and seeing it as it's a graphic novel with less writing than there is pictures, the fact that I didn't love the writing style is kind of a big deal. The wording and the phrases the characters would use, it just wasn't my cup of tea, which is really sad because I know that Mel and Clint both love this graphic novel. It just wasn't one that worked for me, unfortunately. Maybe I'll give it a go, another try. Maybe if I can get it from the library as a physical book, maybe I can try it again. But for this year, I am definitely letting that one go and saying maybe next year. Okay, that is all the books that I wanted to talk about today. I didn't think this video was going to be as long as it is, so if you made it to the end, I love and appreciate you so much. I would love to know down below what your worst books of 2021 were. Please feel free to rant about them in the comments so I can laugh at your crazy and insane thoughts on books that maybe I loved and maybe I didn't. And maybe we can bond over things that we both didn't like, because that always sounds like fun, right? But feel free to let me know what you disliked or what disappointed you or what you DNF'd this year. I would love to chat with you in the comments. If you made it to the end of this video, leave the emoji where the face is all red and he has cuss words or symbols in his mouth. I'll put it up on the screen. I think that emoji is very fitting because some of these books really did make me very angry, and I'm sure some of the books that you read this year made you angry as well. So leave that emoji if you made it to the end. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. And of course, leave any comments, questions, suggestions in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!